Welcome, 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 everyone, to today's session, Employee Experience 2.0, Building Culture in a Tech-Driven World. Thanks to HR Geckos for sponsoring today's show. If you're attending live, leave us a comment and we will enter you into a drawing for a Starbucks card. It's always a great day for a good cuppa. If you haven't already, drop here live in the chat now so your name gets added. I'm your host, Jay Polaki, and here's a brief message from our sponsor. HR Geckos empowers HR leaders by automating tasks and enabling employee self-service so they can focus on strategy. Developed by HR professionals for HR professionals, HR Geckos helps you take the pulse of HR operations and prioritize what matters most: people. Interested in learning more about HR Geckos? Get in touch. Schedule a consult with our team at hrgeckos.com or simply scan this QR code. We are thrilled to announce our strategic partnership with Paycor, now a Paychex company. And the HR Geckos team is looking forward to empowering Paycor and Paychex customers with AI-powered help desks and workflows to automate repetitive tasks, real-time workforce analytics to drive strategic decision-making, and 24/7 support for employees anytime, anywhere. Scan the QR code or go to the following link, which we will post in the comments, to find us on the Paycor marketplace. Also, make sure you connect with us and our team here at HR Geckos so you can transform your team to be as agile as a gecko. Sign up for a free 3-week trial at hrgeckos.com. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Employee Experience 2.0, Building Culture in a Tech-Driven World. I'm joined by my friends and experienced IT and HR professionals, Wesley Eugene and Duane Bray. Hi, Duane. Hi, Wes. How are you doing?
Great. How are you doing? Good to be here today.
Absolutely. So good to see you. I'll give you both a chance to present a brief intro about what you do and the wonderful work you do in your own world of work. And before that, I'd like to share with our guest today my LinkedIn contact information. As the founder and chief gecko at HR Geckos, I've built HR Geckos to reduce the administrative burden on HR teams and automate HR service delivery. I bring 25 plus years of global experience leading and transforming HR functions across diverse industries. I'm happy to connect via email or scan this QR code to connect on LinkedIn. I'll also drop the link in the comments. Also, I wanted to make you aware of several things we do here. I host the HR Bytes podcast, where I bring you insights from HR practitioners who are digital HR leaders. Season 5 is live, so please catch it anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'd also like to invite you to join our HR Bytes community here on LinkedIn, and we're also on Facebook, and we'll drop all these links in the comments. We just did a 5-city tour with our roadshow, AI Ready or Not, where we curated conversations with HR and business leaders who are down in the trenches, transforming their organizations in this era of AI. And to that end, I'd love to invite you to take part in a short anonymized survey to share how AI ready your HR team and business is today. Please note the link will expire in 5 days, and you will receive a detailed report once we complete our survey by the fall of this year, and we'll post the link in the comments as well. And just in case you're on Substack, I also wrote my Substack. My first Substack was about how AI ready or unready your HR team is. So we'll post the link to my Substack. It's called Jay's Bytes, just like HR Bytes. So please do follow along and share your insights. So Wes and Duane, thank you so much for joining today's fast-moving session. Duane, as the CPO at GroupIt, You're doing so much work in the world of work with design and applying all of your 25 plus years of HR experience as CHRO, right, in the throw of things. So what's rocking in your world of work today?
Let's see. Today, there's a lot of work I'm thinking about the relationship between AI and voice of the employee. So how we can take human insights and better amplify those needs and understand and analyze them. So that's something I'm interested in at the moment and spending some time focusing on.
Wonderful. Wes, how about you? What's going on in your world of work?
Yeah, yeah. In my world of work, I'm continuing to explore what it means to deliver human-centered IT services, design, develop, deliver human-centered IT services, and what that really means, especially in this age of AI. But also, there are some new things that I'm getting into these days. I just launched a brand new community called Amplified, and it was born out of an experiment that's like now led to the full launch of a community focused on really rethinking how we think about job search and pivoting from job search, which I've discovered is honestly truly broken, to talent discovery. It's a real significant shift, but it's having some promising results.
Wonderful. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to employee experience, and you are at the forefront with this community you just started and all the work you do at Hit Global as well. So I'm really excited to bring both your and Duane's perspective to today's session, which is aptly titled Employee Experience 2.0 and Building Culture in a Tech-Driven World. So, as an HR practitioner turned CEO of HR Geckos, I've spent years inside HR teams hearing employee experience is a priority. And then budgets tightened and it quietly slipped off the CEO slide. Today, and there's so many competing priorities for CEOs who are under pressure to hit growth, efficiency, and AI adoption goals. So experience can sound kind of soft and fluffy compared to the hard metrics like margin and market share and things which have taken precedence on the list of priorities for a business today. But as you know, data definitely tells a different story. Retention, engagement, productivity definitely are still at the top of CEO challenges because all of this is driven by how an employee feels. And one of the questions we posed as a prelude to today's session was, if your employees don't love working at your company, why will your customers want to buy from you? And so our goal today is to reframe employee experience as a measurable, tech-enabled driver of retention and performance, and not just a nice to have. So we want to start today's session by asking you in the audience, if you're here live, we invite you to post your questions in the comments and share your own experiences with AI as well. But here's the question for you. In your organization today, how explicitly is employee experience called out as a CEO level priority? And as you respond to this question, we'd love for you, for our guests to chime in on this topic, and we'll post this question in the comments for you to see it and be able to respond to it. So, Duane and Wes, from your CIO vantage point, when you sit with CEOs and CFOs, how often does employee experience explicitly show up as a priority versus digital transformation or AI transformation? What language gets their attention?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I would say, generally speaking, it doesn't come up as often as we would love it to, especially in this age of AI. There are exceptions, right? There are exceptions, particularly where the employee experience is clearly seen to have a outsized impact, direct impact on the customer experience. As an example, if you think about leaders of academic institutions, the employee experience, faculty, staff is so adjacent to the student, the learner experience, that it is a CEO priority then. The same thing is true of healthcare. In healthcare, the employee experience as nurses, doctors, different folks that are delivering care is so adjacent to the patient experience that it's impossible to ignore, and it indeed is a priority. But in other sectors, it's a little more difficult. Sometimes we find it less. I find that it comes up less often and needs to actually be championed in order to get its due.
Well, that's a great start to the conversation, Wes, because as you know, Duane has been speaking about this for quite some time, and both of you have had a chance to work through some of this at IDEO, and you did great work there together. So, Duane, before I jump into the IDEO journey, where you both, brought the CIO and the CHRO perspective to employee experience, what, according to you, is sometimes very abstract to the CEO? How do you connect employee experience to outcomes your CEO can't ignore, like regrettable turnover or missed revenue or failed product launches?
I just did a rookie mistake. I was muted. It was a great question, because I think one of the things that's helpful sometimes is to understand the different lenses that might exist across the ecosystem within our organizations. And I don't like to deal in generalities, but I think in this case, it can be helpful, right? If we think about the CEO, as you were saying earlier, they're very operational, outcome and metric focused, right? So they're looking to understand value in those terms. And we've talked a lot about how an expectation on HR leaders is to be able to speak in that language. But I think the other thing is CEOs generally are going to be more optimistic than employees about how effective employee experience is, because they're often removed from the day-to-day. I remember we had this interesting experience when I was at IDEO. We had an automaker as a client, and they thought that the repair process was amazing, but that's because as the executive team, someone came and took their cars from the parking lot and took them to be repaired. So at the end of the day, they got in their car and they went home. So you can be shielded from the realities of the day-to-day, and also people often manage up. So if I'm the CEO, I'm hearing more of the good feedback than the bad. And I think there's some things that are also true for us as HR leaders. Like, we are focused on capabilities and culture and systems and tools and all these things. Employee experience really matters to us. But I think sometimes we can also drink too much of our own Kool-Aid. There's a lot of studies that show time and time again that HR leaders think employee experience programs are more effective than what employees think. So then what that leaves us with is employees who are experiencing a trust gap, where they may think that they're not seen or understood, or that their needs really matter. So I think there's one thing, which is actually, as HR leaders, if we're going to go to the C-suite and talk about, make the case for employee experience, that we really know what's going on. And then I think the other piece is to frame what we're learning in outcomes that CEOs do care about. So I think, the tangibility of understanding what leads to attrition or lower productivity or poor outcomes overall is important, but also understanding some of the things that they also care about, where if and the employer brand is actually stronger because of an experience that we've created or programs that we've put in place, to speak in those terms. So whether that's about the ability to retain our top talent or attract the best of the new talent, things like that. So framing it in the things that people care about and really coming armed with that understanding. But I do think the underlying thing is to understand, actually, if there is a trust gap in your organization, is there a delta between the CEO and HR leaders and what employees think about employee experience?
Well, we have an audience member, Owen. Hi, Owen. He just placed a comment here, and I just wanted to read it out for everyone. He says, having employees getting fired and replaced with AI that trains on past employee data is going to be a huge problem as fewer and fewer people create the data that AI needs to train on. And one of the easiest way to kill morale is not to trust and to micromanage, to your point, Duane. So thank you, Owen, for those comments. Yes, we are going to cover a little bit of this during today's session, but as you know, this is an ongoing discussion, and we really need to be able to, speak to this, as Duane just mentioned, in the language of the C-suite and connect the outcomes to employee experience. And that way we can make sure that, they aren't ignored. Eric just joined us. Hi, Eric. He says, very important to the CEO. One of the things I work on to find ways to improve the engagement and feeling of company connectiveness to the gig drivers that deliver groceries to Walmart customers. That's a great example, Eric. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask the audience a question here. So Eric and Owen and anyone else who's here, if you could please chime in, and we'll post this question here in the comments as well. Which moment that matters creates the most tickets or questions in your organization? Is it onboarding, day 1 to 90, leave, time off and scheduling, benefits and life events, or job manager location changes? As you post your answers in the comments, we'll go on to the next segment of today's discussion, which is personalized employee journeys and tech. So, we often see employee experience happening in the moments that matter. Being in HR for as long as I've been, I've seen requests, questions, transitions both feel frustrating as well as exciting and enjoyable. So there's a spectrum of emotions that goes hand in hand in those moments that matter. At HR Geckos, when we look at ticket data across organizations, we see the same hotspots pop up again and again, like leave and time off, onboarding, role or manager changes, benefits changes, and that's where requests pile up and emotions run pretty high. And these ticket patterns tell a story. They are the fingerprints of your employee journey. So Duane, as both CHRO and Chief Product Officer, you bring a lens to this discussion where we can think in journeys in terms of design. How do you use HR tech or technology to personalize the path for different personas, a new grad, a frontline worker like Eric mentioned, or someone who is a manager, a middle manager, instead of giving everyone a one-size-fits-all experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, I found journeys to be a powerful tool in the design process because they allow us to use different through lines through our organization. So whether that's by role or seniority or demographics or different stages. And that's powerful in 2 different ways. One, it can be generative. So it could suggest things that we might do and have different ways to assess how that might work across different components of our organization. It can also be used in an evaluative way. So we're getting feedback that something isn't working or we're not seeing the results that we'd expect. Can we start to illuminate that a bit more? And what it helps us do is to be a bit more concrete and granular with things that we're hearing. It helps us understand context that may be different from our own, right? We're often very biased by our own knowledge and experiences. So how does someone of a very different role from us, a very different mindset, very different lived experience go through the organization? So I find that helpful because it helps us see where there might be common ground, but also where there are differences. I think the onboarding one is a really great example because I think for many people, they come in with maybe no work experience or maybe a prior work experience of a culture that was very different from our own. and it's a real flashpoint of understanding how your culture shows up. So I think that's really powerful. And we now have the ability to create these more seamless experiences with the technology that we have. Or on the flip side, we duct tape together a whole bunch of disparate systems and hope that people can figure it out. So I think some of those pain points, right, how technology helps stitch us together or how it can actually create very, very discordant elements of the process are important.
Well, we have a few answers come in to your point, Duane. A lot of them are saying onboarding seems to be one of those, pain points when it comes to employee experience and creating that personalized employee journey. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I think we all know is definitely one of those friction points when it comes to an employee journey. But when Wes and you were at IDEO, both of you designed internal employee journeys with the same care you gave external customer experiences, so can you speak to a little bit to how you thought of this in a holistic way across IT, HR operations, and external customers, clients, and partners were all considered in a similar manner? I'll let Wes chime in first, and then Duane, I'd like you to follow up.
Yeah, so at IDEO is really fantastic because we're living in that ecosystem where we're always thinking about experiences and prioritizing them. And so we really did take a collaborative, co-creative approach to really thinking through onboarding, for example, by reducing system complexity up front, enabling employees to have less touch points necessary in order to be able to fully have all the tools, systems, and permissions needed to let free their creative genius. We partnered really closely. I mean, Duane, what anecdotes or what examples would you like to bring into this? Because I think there are plenty of stories to pull from.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I wanted to echo that really resonated with what you just said is part of this is the tools and the systems, but the other is the commitment across our infrastructure teams to work together. So what I liked when you were starting to articulate some of the things like around onboarding and reducing the number of systems that people deal with, we had shared goals, right? Yeah. So we had shared goals and we were putting that employee experience at first. I loved how you said, we're trying, in this case, it's a design consultancy, so helping our employees unleash their creativity, right? If we're not doing that well, the business suffers overall. So I think seeing us as enabling that was really powerful. I think to that end also, one of the things we tried to do is help employees understand the why behind what we were doing. So trying to build a place that people could go to kind of find a repository of answers and solutions as kind of like the way to kick off what I was doing. I could start in one place and actually find most of the things I did and also understand why we did what we did. Because sometimes I think some of the confusion is, why do we have this approach to benefits? Why are we doing this around our retirement accounts? What is our strategy for compensation, right? So why am I getting paid what I paid? So illuminating those things alongside the tools that actually allowed you to do that work as an employee was another big part of it, I would say.
Yeah, and I know, Jay, you're going to jump in, but the one thing I'll surface again on this, Duane, is that I think we did a pretty. I mean, I'm not trying to give ourselves a pat on the back here, but I think one behavior to emulate was co-creation, right? Because we worked really closely to have strong feedback loops between the employees and internal operations to understand what was working well and what were areas of friction and concern. Yeah, I'll just tee that up. Would like to say more about that.
Well, that's a great segue to our audience question. What's the biggest friction employees face when they need help from HR, IT, and payroll? And while our audience is responding to this, Wes, I wanted to ask you, where have you seen tech improve an employee journey? For example, did you see a smoother day one experience or cleaner benefits, change? What had to be true in the back end when it comes to the systems standpoint of things? What had to be true in the back end for that to work?
Yeah. To answer your first question, I have seen where tech played an instrumental role in improving the employee experience. What that required on the back end was tighter integration, right? Tighter integration. So you've got two things happening. You have the systems at the engagement layer, right? So these are the portals, the user-facing systems that the employees are interacting with. And then you have the story of, okay, where does all this data go? And how does it move from point A to point B to point, in the IT world, to point Z? Every letter of the alphabet often is used, right? And so realizing and understanding where the data needs to reappear so that there's less redundant rekeying of data, where really understanding that journey end to end and being able to walk through it informs how we need to optimize the architecture on the back end. So a lot of it is about tighter integration and effective data governance.
Well, we have a few answers coming into this question. Owen says, not knowing where to go. Each department in a company has separate documentation and APIs, and there is no design doc and central location for documentation. Yes, Owen, you hit the nail on the head. We see that a lot at HR Geckos when we speak to clients. It's one of the biggest pain points when it comes to employee experience. We have, I'm not going to try to murder this name, but I will try to pronounce it correctly. And please correct me, Jibenga Fola Alade. I hope I said that right. Sorry if I didn't. Jibenga says, not knowing where to go and who to ask. And that's, again, one of those biggest pain points we answer here at HR Geckos all the time. But thank you for chiming in on that, because that's exactly, one of the reasons why employee experience is so important in today's tech-driven world, because we have a lot of tools like HR Geckos platform to help employees to, feel that seamless connection and feel, have a real smooth day one experience on the job. But somehow, the tech is not able to connect to the human experience, even in today's AI era. So thank you for chiming in on that, all of you. We'll move on to our next segment. As I mentioned, this is a quick moving session today. When it comes to tools, I've never heard any employee say, I want more tools. They definitely want less friction, fewer logins, fewer emails, fewer who do I even ask kind of moments. And we see this clearly in HR Geckos environments when employees can query, create, and track their HR requests anytime, anywhere, on any device in one place. Ticket volume may stay the same, but frustration drops because the experience is predictable and transparent. So Wes, from your CIO standpoint, CIOs are constantly asked to modernize the tech stack, which can unintentionally create tool sprawl. How do you decide when a new employee experience tool actually reduces friction versus just adding more digital noise?
That's a great question. I chuckled because that's the bane of any and every CIO's existence, right? Especially in this day and age with AI. So look, let's keep it real. 15 years ago, the CIO's quandary was dealing with that, but like dealing with that, between 15 and even as just 5 years ago, between 15 and 5 years ago, business partners, right? So like Duane might come in and say, hey, here's this fantastic new HRIS system. Let's look at how we might deploy that. Or may have a head of operations come in with another system. That's one challenge. The other challenge, though, like today, is you still have those business partners coming in, but you also have your employees that vibe coded something really cool over the weekend. And they're like, look what I just created in my garage. This would really simplify so many things. Why doesn't IT work this fast? And so the challenge that IT leaders have when they're making these decisions is, one, prioritizing the overall employee experience to ensure that any adds to that experience, any tools that are added to that experience are not adding friction or adding clicks or adding to the effort employees need to advocate to navigate. But in addition to that, the other challenge that they have is ensuring that we also take a tight view on how we might actually remove tools that are no longer serving us. And that's not always an easy conversation with your CFO, because we may have a financial commitment made by a tool that goes beyond its usefulness to our employees. So the right decision sometimes may be to let a tool sit on the shelf, so to speak, even though we still have an ongoing financial commitment, because it's lost its utility to your employee experience. The final point I'll make about this, Jay, is ultimately in trying to navigate all of this, it's a lot of collaboration and partnership, really explaining to your employees, these are the decisions that we're sitting with, these are the pros and the cons, and inviting them in to be collaborators in that decisioning. There were times at IDEO, there were multiple tools for our creatives, our design community, that were well loved and like literally strongly contested conversations, very heated debates about which tools to use here and there. And we had to we made sure everyone was heard, and then we had to like be transparent about what our constraints were in order to actually come to a resolution that was beneficial for everyone.
Well, to both your points, we have one of your colleagues from IDEO just chime in here. Welcome, Alexandra. And she says to her, one of the biggest strengths of IDEO was beyond a smooth minimum touch technical onboarding, which for me includes technical details like comp. It's huge focus on connection was one of the biggest things for her, and the strengths and the celebratory personal introduction of new employees, as well as helping them connect fast with the community and connecting them to the company's purpose and mission really stood out for me as a former IDEO employee. So that's a great validation of what you both just shared. Thank you for chiming in, Alexandra. And to that point, Duane, from the employee's point of view, friction does show up. It shows up as, I don't know where to go. I already answered that, or I opened a ticket and it disappeared. What design principles do you use to make sure tech feels like a concierge and not a maze?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's great to see some of our IDEO colleagues in this session. So Alexandra and Jen, good to see you both. I think it goes back to something that Wes was saying earlier, which is the time to involve employees is not after you've shipped the tools and systems. The time is actually when you're thinking about doing something. So one of the things that we often invested in, we were thinking, even of things that were like, deciding what our new HRIS system was going to be, having employees that were part of that team to give their lens, right? We as HR leaders know too much. We have our own experience, but we have to get out of our own heads sometimes and see the things that other people notice in that. And how much are some of these systems things that employees need to interact with directly? Do they contribute, or are they kind of fragmented or fractured? And that's why in some cases, echoing something that Owen said earlier, was this idea that sometimes having one place to go initially is actually really important because it gives people a starting point, something to know. And I think we were really big on thinking about transparency and accountability, meaning where do I go and who's helping me? So if there's something that I need help with, I actually know who the person is who's working on that solution. It's visible to me so that I can actually reach out to that person. We also tried to make sure that there was a blend of the technology-based solutions and just the person that you knew who was responsible for your area, because I sometimes don't want to think about where do I go in a system? What do I log into in order to get the help I need? I might just want to go to this person, and maybe that person guides me into the system. But I think it's really, really powerful to make sure that we're actually taking kind of an employee first lens. And again, listening to what employees are saying and really engaging with them is so key to building a solid set of design principles.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff when it comes to tools and the human connection. And it's an ongoing debate and discussion and a challenge for most organizations in today's AI era. So I have a question for our audience. When it comes to employee experience related metrics, do you actively track and review at least quarterly any of these metrics, like ticket, resolution times, customer service when it comes to employee experience scores on HR services, retention, turnover, linked to employee experience pain points, or you just don't consistently track any employee experience metrics? So we'll wait for you to respond to these questions as we move on to our next segment. This is where I think employee experience becomes real for CEOs when it comes to measuring employee experience impact on retention and productivity. How can we measure it? Can we link it to retention and productivity? And when we work with clients through our HR Gecko service centers, we can actually see this employee experience in the data. Our SLA dashboard shows how fast we resolve a ticket for an employee. Our customer service satisfaction and EX survey scores after each interaction kind of tell us, where the pain points are. And we also are able to identify the hotspots where, there's a long queue when it comes to this particular topic. And also we see, how employees experience dissatisfaction, where it's spiking, and all of those good data points that are so crucial with today's, employee experience 2.0. So Duane, when you talk about employee experience at the executive table, what are your go-to metrics, beyond engagement scores? What do you track to show that improving experience is improving retention and performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of examples in the abstract. I think it's actually understanding the investments we're making in specific programs and the hard and soft metrics. So sometimes it is understanding whether our acceptance rate is going up. Sometimes it does matter whether or not the time to resolution is faster. But sometimes it also matters whether employees are feeling more seen or engaged, or give a stronger NPS score, which matters to the employer brand. The other thing for me, I find sometimes, is measuring also helps us get to a source of truth. And so I've also been in situations where the executive team builds a point of view based on the lens that they have, which might get us to the wrong place. So a good example was one where we weren't meeting our hiring targets. And the assumption from the executive team is that the recruiters weren't actually doing their job. They weren't working hard enough. They weren't processing as many applicants. They weren't screening resumes fast enough. And so we started to measure every time there was a hiring slowdown, what was the core, what was the source? And the number one source was the hiring manager being too busy. So the interviews had to be rescheduled. And the number two reason was that the hiring teams overall could not get aligned around the prioritization of the skills to finalize the job description. And that's important information to have, because you say, what is the right intervention? And two, I was trying to protect my team. Like, you don't want to criticize a recruiter who's working 60 hours a week to tell them that they need to work harder, when that's not actually going to make any difference to the outcome if a hiring manager is too busy. So I think coming armed with data is really important. And it's not just to show what collectively has worked or not, but actually understanding what the right course of action is for programs or interventions that we're creating.
Well, that's a great segue for what I want to ask Wes next. Wes, how do you tie all of these employee experience service metrics back to tech and business outcomes? Do you talk in terms of numbers when it comes to fewer outages, higher adoption of core tools, or faster time to productivity for new hires? How do you position these metrics?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Jay. So really, the leading practice that I tend to apply in all of these situations, as often as I can, is really breaking down the silos, right? So what do I mean? We really need to have shared accountability, a shared vision of success. A simple tool to use here is a balanced scorecard, of course. And I'm not saying that IT metrics go away, but the IT metrics that are important, they're interpreted in context of the business strategies and goals that we all share and we're trying to accomplish. I think when you look at things from an experience lens, you have to rethink traditional IT metrics. For example, earlier in my career, like average call handling time was something that we measured, right? And if we saw that, on average, our call handling time was long, we assumed that that was a bad thing, because we wanted people to get off the phone with IT, return to their core jobs, and be as productive as possible. However, from an experience standpoint, that I would challenge any technology leader to just throw that out. Look at the example of Zappos. At the end of the day, you want your people to be creating a rapport with your users. You want your users to feel listened to, not rushed off the phone. And you want them to feel that IT is committed to the successful, complete, true resolution of whatever it is that is challenging them in that moment. So does time really matter? Average call handling time, I'd say from an experience standpoint, it does not. In fact, maybe you invert it and say, I'm going to reward the person with the longest average call handling time this month, because I know they spent more time with the users and they've been more committed to enhancing and elevating the experience.
Well, thank you for that. That's awesome that you are thinking and advocating to think in terms of, the human first, the people first approach when it comes to any of the design and the architecture on the back end of things for a system to really do what it's purported to do, that is make the human connection stronger and make work feel, more human and not less human, right? So that's the whole idea behind any of these tools. So I'm going to take us to our next segment, which is some quick wins for immediate employee experience improvements. I always want to give some practical tips and takeaways for our audience here. And I'll start, and I'll ask both of you to come up with what you would like to advocate and provide to today's audience. But one thing I always, think of as a quick win is map your top 3 moments that matter by looking at where, your most employee tickets or employee requests are piling up. It's usually leave, onboarding, and benefits, and start there. And then give employees one front door for HR and workplace help. A single place to ask, track, resolve on any device, anywhere, at any time. That's one of the quick wins that you can definitely put in place immediately. I mean, it's as easy as flipping on a switch, because I know for sure HR Geckos does that for our clients today. And you can really provide that one front door for HR and workplace help pretty easily and seamlessly in today's work environments. And lastly, the third thing I want to say is turn on simple metrics. Like we mentioned, talk about customer satisfaction scores from an employee standpoint after their tickets or their queries have been resolved. Make sure that you can spot experience issues before they become exit interviews, basically. So, Duane, in one sentence, what's the next best step an HR leader should take this month if they want to move toward employee experience 2.0 in a tech-driven world?
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to what I was saying in the beginning about understanding whether or not there's a trust gap, right, between what we think is going on versus employees. So I'd say if you have an initiative going on for employee experience that your employees will see or feel in some way, build an advisory team where you have some set of employees that represent different roles, perspectives, et cetera, and ask them to be part of the journey of making that. You will hear new perspectives, you will see new things, you will hopefully actually see your own systems through other lenses and see what that does to change the decisions you make.
And Wes, your take on this and your quick win?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with Duane. I think from a quick win perspective, I would highly recommend that technology leaders in this space, even HR leaders can do the same, but this is more a quick win for IT and improving the employee experience, is to get from behind your desk and throw yourself into the experience, the employee experience. What do I mean? I'm literally saying, do what in some circles I call a service safari. And what am I talking about? I'm literally saying, go and spend time in operations. If you have a call center, spend time in the call center. Wherever the business is happening, go out into the field, take some time out from your day-to-day IT activities and go in and build relationships. You would find that you will learn so much by observing, because all that information you need to resolve a ticket isn't actually in the ticket. There's what the user reports, there's what you can actually observe with your eyes, and then in addition to what you can observe with your eyes, there's body language. Oh my goodness. As you're talking to a user about their day-to-day challenges with tech, are they bored? Are they upset? Are they gritting their teeth? Are they furrowing their eyebrows? Like, there's all of this verbal and nonverbal information in the environment itself that would provide incredible insights in leapfrogging advancements in the employee experience. So get from behind the desk, ditch the desk to do your best.
Well, thank you for that brilliant new buzzword, a service safari. As usual, I am going to steal that phrase from you, Wes, and make it my own. So I've made it public right here, and you've given me all rights to this. So thank you for that wonderful insight. I joke, but today's session, everyone, is bringing us back to that core idea that technology should make work feel more human and not less. So if you remember nothing else from today, take this with you. Employee experience is not a campaign. It should be a service safari, according to Wes, and it's an operating system as well. So every request, every handoff, every interaction is a data point and a culture signal. And when you design those moments intentionally, as our guests today have validated through their own experiences, you're not just fixing service, you're actually building trust. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And a huge thank you to Wes and Duane for bringing both the technology and people lenses to this conversation. If you'd like to continue exploring how an HR service center model can support your employee experience 2.0 journey, I'd love to connect after this session. Until then, do keep asking, does this make work easier and clearer for our people? If the answer is yes, you are on the right track. So thank you, Duane and Wes. Thank you so much for being here. And if anyone wants to catch a replay, make sure you check out our webinar replays page at hrgeckos.com. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.